What happens when two entertainment powerhouses clash on live television in a way that nobody saw coming? What you're about to witness is one of the most shocking moments in daytime TV history, a confrontation so intense that it ended with security being called and a guest being escorted off set. This is the story of how Eddie Murphy got kicked off Jennifer Hudson's show after a heated exchange that left audiences stunned and the internet buzzing for weeks. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because this story gets more unbelievable with every detail. The Jennifer Hudson show had been building momentum as one of daytime television's rising stars. Hudson, known for her powerhouse vocals and warm personality, had carved out her niche by creating an intimate setting where celebrities could share their stories in a relaxed, conversational atmosphere. Her approach was different from the typical talk show format. She preferred deeper conversations over surface-level promotion, and guests seemed to appreciate the genuine connection she fostered. When Eddie Murphy was booked as a guest, everyone expected the usual charm offensive. Murphy, the comedy legend behind Beverly Hills Cop, Coming to America, and countless other classics, was known for his quick wit and ability to work any room. He had been making the rounds promoting his latest project, and his appearance on Hudson's show was meant to be another stop on what had been a fairly routine press tour. The show began exactly as planned. Hudson welcomed Murphy with her signature warmth, and the audience responded with enthusiastic applause. Murphy settled into the guest chair with his characteristic confidence, flashing that million-dollar smile that had made him one of Hollywood's most bankable stars for decades. "Eddie Murphy, welcome to the show," Hudson said, her voice carrying that rich, soulful quality that had made her famous. "I have to say, I've been a fan since I was a little girl watching you on Saturday Night Live." Murphy nodded appreciatively. "Thank you, Jennifer. And congratulations on this show. It's really something special you've built here." The opening minutes proceeded smoothly. They discussed Murphy's career trajectory, his recent projects, and his thoughts on comedy in the modern era. Hudson asked thoughtful questions about his creative process, and Murphy responded with engaging anecdotes that had the audience laughing and leaning in for more. But then Hudson shifted gears in a way that caught everyone off guard. Instead of continuing with the expected promotional softball questions, she decided to dig deeper into something that had been making headlines in entertainment circles. "Eddie, I want to talk about something that's been in the news lately," Hudson said, her tone becoming more serious. "There have been some reports about your involvement in certain business dealings, specifically regarding the treatment of up-and-coming comedians in projects you've been executive producing." The change in Murphy's demeanor was immediate and noticeable. His relaxed posture stiffened slightly, and the easy smile that had been playing across his face began to fade. This wasn't the direction he had expected the conversation to take. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, Jennifer," Murphy replied, his voice taking on a more guarded tone. "I think there might be some misinformation floating around." Hudson didn't back down. She had done her homework, and she wasn't going to let this opportunity slip by. "I'm talking about the allegations from several comedians who claim they were promised opportunities that never materialized, and that their material was used without proper credit or compensation." The studio audience, which had been warm and welcoming just moments before, began to sense the shift in energy. The comfortable atmosphere that Hudson typically cultivated was being replaced by something more tense and confrontational. Murphy's response was measured but clearly defensive. "Look, Jennifer, I've been in this business for over 4 decades. I've worked with countless people, and sometimes there are misunderstandings about agreements or expectations. But I've always conducted my business with integrity." "That's not what these comedians are saying, Eddie," Hudson pressed on. "They're saying you specifically promised them opportunities, brought them into meetings, had them develop material, and then cut them out of the process entirely." The tension in the studio was becoming palpable. Murphy shifted in his chair, and for the first time in the interview he looked genuinely uncomfortable. This was not the friendly promotional appearance he had signed up for. "Jennifer, with all due respect, I don't think this is the appropriate forum for these kinds of accusations," Murphy said, his voice beginning to show signs of irritation. "These are business matters that should be handled through proper channels, Not on daytime television. But Hudson wasn't backing down. She had built her show on the foundation of meaningful conversations, and she felt that Murphy leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he looked directly at Hudson. The playful, charming persona that had defined his public image for decades was nowhere to be found. In its place was someone who felt cornered and wasn't going to take it quietly. "You want to talk about journalism, Jennifer?" Murphy said, his voice dropping to a more serious register. "Then let's talk about doing your homework properly. Because if you had actually done real journalism instead of just reading gossip blogs and industry rumors, you'd know that every single one of those comedians signed contracts that clearly outlined expectations and compensation." Hudson didn't flinch. "I've seen the contracts, Eddie. That's exactly why I'm asking these questions. The contracts you're referring to were heavily weighted in your favor, with vague language about potential opportunities that gave you complete discretion to walk away at any time." The audience was transfixed. Many of them had phones out, recording what was clearly becoming television history. Murphy glanced around the studio, seeming to realize for the first time that this wasn't going to be something he could laugh off or charm his way out of. "So now you're a contract lawyer too?" Murphy shot back, his voice rising slightly. Those contracts were reviewed by teams of attorneys. Everyone knew exactly what they were signing. These comedians weren't naive children. They were adults making business decisions. "Adults who trusted you," Hudson countered immediately. "Adults who grew up watching you break barriers and open doors, who thought you were going to do the same for them. Instead, according to multiple sources, you used their ideas, their material, their connections, and then discarded them when it was convenient." Murphy stood up from his chair, a move that caught everyone in the studio off guard. Hudson remained seated, maintaining her composure, but the gesture was clearly meant to intimidate. "Multiple sources," Murphy repeated, his tone dripping with skepticism. "Let me guess, anonymous sources who won't go on record? People with axes to grind who didn't make it in this business and need someone to blame?" "Actually, no," Hudson replied calmly, reaching for a folder that had been placed beside her chair. "I have statements from Marcus Williams, Tanya Rodriguez, and David Chen, all willing to go on record about their experiences working with your production company." Murphy's face visibly darkened at the mention of specific names. "You brought paperwork to ambush me on television? This is unbelievable." "It's not an ambush when I told your publicist exactly what topics we'd be covering," Hudson said, her voice remaining steady despite the growing tension. "Your team chose not to prepare you for these questions." The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this unprecedented confrontation unfold. Murphy began pacing slightly, his agitation becoming more apparent with each step. "My publicist told me this would be about my new projects and my career highlights," Murphy said, his voice getting louder. "Nobody said anything about turning this into some kind of trial." "It's not a trial, Eddie. It's accountability. You've built an empire on the backs of other people's talent. And when those people try to speak up, they get buried by legal teams and non-disclosure agreements." Murphy stopped pacing and turned to face Hudson directly. "You know what, Jennifer? You're right. I have built an empire. I've created opportunities for hundreds of people, launched careers, and generated millions of dollars in revenue for this industry. And yes, sometimes business relationships don't work out the way everyone hoped they would. That's called reality." "Reality for who?" Hudson pressed. "Reality for the established star who gets to pick and choose which promises to keep? Or reality for the struggling artist who puts their trust in someone they admire and gets left with nothing?" Murphy's composure was deteriorating rapidly. "You want to talk about struggling artists? I was a struggling artist once too. Nobody handed me anything. I worked for everything I got, and I earned every opportunity through talent and persistence. And now you're in a position to lift others up the same way people lifted you up," Hudson said, her voice gaining intensity. "Instead, according to these comedians, you're using that position to exploit people who can't fight back." "Exploit?" Murphy's voice cracked with indignation. "I gave these people opportunities they never would have had otherwise. I brought them into rooms they never could have accessed on their own. If they couldn't capitalize on those opportunities, that's not my fault. Bringing someone into a room and then taking credit for their ideas isn't giving them an opportunity. Eddie, it's using them. Murphy ran his hand over his face, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. You know what? This is exactly the kind of garbage that's recording on their phones, capturing every heated exchange. Hudson glanced briefly at her production team off camera, and even they looked stunned by how far this had escalated. Eddie, do you hear yourself right now? Hudson asked, her voice carrying a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. You're basically saying that exploitation is just part of the business, and if people don't like it, they should leave. I'm saying that business is business, Murphy replied, his voice getting sharper. I'm saying that in the real world, not every handshake leads to a contract, not every meeting leads to a deal, and not every introduction leads to a career. But when you specifically promise someone that it will, and they restructure their entire life based on that promise, you have a responsibility to follow through. According to who? According to some unwritten rule in your imagination? Hudson walked closer to where Murphy was standing, her own frustration finally beginning to show. According to basic human decency, Eddie. According to treating people with the same respect you want to be treated with. Murphy let out a harsh laugh. Human decency? You want to lecture me about human decency while you're trying to destroy my reputation on national television? I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm trying to get answers for people who deserve them. People who deserve them? Murphy's voice was getting dangerously loud now. What makes them so special? What makes their stories more important than the hundreds of people I have helped over the years? The fact that they're willing to tell the truth about what happened to them, even when they know they'll face retaliation for it. Retaliation? Murphy's eyes flashed with anger. Is that what you think this is about? You think I'm some kind of Hollywood villain going around destroying people's careers. I think you're someone who got so comfortable with power that you forgot what it felt like to not have it. Murphy stepped closer to Hudson, close enough that the cameras had to adjust to keep both of them in frame. You know what I think? I think you're jealous. I think you see someone who built something real and lasting, and you can't stand it. Hudson didn't back down from his proximity. Jealous of what, Eddie? Jealous of having to look in the mirror every day knowing I built my success on other people's broken dreams? You built your success on a television show that nobody will remember in 5 years, Murphy shot back. I built mine on talent that's lasted decades. Talent that you've used as a weapon against people who couldn't defend themselves? A weapon? Murphy's voice cracked with indignation. My talent is a weapon now? My success is somehow an attack on other people? When you use it to manipulate and deceive people, yes. Murphy turned away from Hudson and addressed the audience directly. This is what passes for journalism these days, folks. Character assassination disguised as holding people accountable. Don't talk to my audience like they're idiots, Eddie, Hudson said firmly. They can see exactly what's happening here. Murphy whirled back around to face her. What's happening here is that you're trying to make yourself look important by tearing down someone who actually is important. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Hudson's face showed a flash of genuine hurt before her professional mask slipped back into place. Actually important? She repeated quietly. Murphy realized immediately that he had crossed a line, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. I've been entertaining people since before you knew what a microphone was. I've created comedy that will outlast both of us. That's importance. And I've given a voice to people who didn't have one, Hudson replied, her voice steady despite the obvious sting of his words. I've created a platform for honest conversations about difficult topics. If you can't see the importance in that, then you're more lost than I thought. Murphy's face was red with anger and frustration. Lost? I'm lost? You're sitting here trying to destroy my legacy based on complaints from people who couldn't make it on their own, and I'm the one who's lost. Your legacy is destroying itself, Eddie. I'm just giving it a microphone. That was the moment everything exploded. Murphy's carefully constructed public persona completely shattered as he pointed aggressively at Hudson and raised his voice to a level that echoed throughout the studio. You know what, Jennifer? Murphy shouted, his voice echoing off the studio walls. You want to play this game? Let's play this game. You think you're some kind of crusading journalist? But you're nothing more than a failed singer who got lucky with a talk show." The audience gasped audibly. Hudson's face went pale, but her resolve only seemed to strengthen. "Eddie, you need to stop talking right now." "Stop talking? Stop talking?" Murphy was practically screaming now. "You started this fight, and now you want me to stop talking when it gets uncomfortable for you? I started a conversation about accountability. You turned it into a personal attack." Murphy laughed maniacally. "Personal attack? You haven't seen a personal attack yet. You want to know what's personal? Personal is sitting here listening to some nobody question my integrity, my character, my entire career based on gossip and hearsay." Hudson's production team could be seen frantically communicating off-camera. The show's director was making hand signals, clearly trying to figure out how to handle what was rapidly becoming an uncontrollable situation. "Eddie, I'm going to give you one chance to sit down and have a civil conversation, or this interview is over," Hudson said, her voice carrying an authority that cut through Murphy's rage. "Civil conversation?" Murphy's voice cracked with bitter laughter. "There's nothing civil about ambushing someone on television. There's nothing civil about trying to destroy someone's reputation for ratings. This isn't about ratings, and you know it." Murphy moved even closer to Hudson, violating every boundary of personal space and professional conduct. "Everything is about ratings with you people. Everything is about creating drama and controversy because you can't create actual content." Hudson finally took a step back, not out of fear, but out of disgust. "You need to get away from me right now, Eddie." "Or what? You'll have me thrown off your little show? You'll call security on the man who sold more movie tickets than you'll ever sell records? If that's what it takes to protect my crew and my audience from this behavior, then yes." Murphy's eyes blazed with fury. "Your crew? Your audience? Nobody cares about your show, Jennifer. Nobody cares about your fake journalism and your manufactured outrage. This show will be canceled within a year, and you'll be back to singing backup for people with real talent." The studio fell into complete silence. Hudson stared at Murphy for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was calm but filled with steel. "Security, please escort Mr. Murphy from the building." Murphy spun around, looking at the audience as if he couldn't believe what was happening. "Are you serious right now? You're actually going to have me removed because I won't let you destroy my reputation?" Two security guards appeared from the wings, moving quickly but professionally toward the interview area. Hudson remained standing exactly where she was, not backing down even an inch. "Eddie, you did this to yourself," she said quietly. "I asked you legitimate questions about serious allegations. You chose to respond with personal attacks and intimidation." Murphy saw the security guards approaching, and his demeanor shifted to something even more volatile. "Don't you dare touch me," he warned them. "I'm leaving on my own." "Mr. Murphy, we just need you to come with us," one of the security guards said in a calm, professional tone. "Come with you?" Murphy's voice was shrill now. "I don't need to come with anybody. This is a joke. This whole thing is a joke." He turned back to Hudson one final time. "You know what, Jennifer? You think you won something here today? You think you accomplished something by humiliating me on television?" Hudson looked directly into his eyes. "I think I showed people exactly who you really are when someone challenges you. And I think that says everything that needs to be said." Murphy's face contorted with rage. "Who I really am. Who I really am is a legend. Who I really am is someone who built something real instead of riding other people's coattails to mediocrity." "Get him out of here," Hudson said to the security guards, her patience finally exhausted. As the guards moved to flank Murphy, he shook them off and started walking toward the exit on his own. But he couldn't resist turning back one more time. "This isn't over, Jennifer. You just made the biggest mistake of your career." "No, Eddie," Hudson called after him, her voice carrying clearly across the stunned studio. "You did." Murphy stormed toward the exit, the security guards following closely behind him. As he reached the studio doors, he turned around one final time and shouted back at Hudson, "Enjoy your 5 minutes of fame, because that's all this is going to get you." The doors slammed shut behind him, leaving the studio in complete silence. Hudson stood alone on the interview set, looking out at an audience of shocked faces, all of them processing what they had just witnessed. She walked slowly back to her chair and sat down, taking a moment to compose herself before addressing the cameras directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed is exactly why these conversations need to happen," she said, her voice steady despite everything that had just occurred. When powerful people are challenged about their behavior, their true character is revealed. She paused, letting her words sink in. Eddie Murphy came on this show knowing exactly what topics we would discuss. His representatives were given every opportunity to prepare him or to provide their side of the story. Instead, he chose to respond to legitimate questions with personal attacks and intimidation tactics. The audience remained silent, still processing the unprecedented confrontation they had witnessed. This is why so many people stay silent when they're mistreated by powerful figures in this industry. Because they know that speaking up means facing